That's a gay-ass podcast.
What? That's a gay-ass podcast. A what? A really, really, really gay podcast that we call That's a Gay-Ass Podcast.
That's a gay-ass name for a gay-ass podcast.
Welcome back to That's a Gay-Ass Podcast, the podcast that asks, whose fault is it that you're gay? It is me, Eric Williams, and this week, Sam Pinkleton is on the podcast, the director of Oh, Mary. That is right, the Broadway hit written by and starring Cole Escola. It literally days ago just announced it's extending again until January of 2025. If you have not seen it, run, don't walk. I was very lucky. I saw it in June, and it makes sense why it is breaking box office smash hit records, and Cole is just a vision. Sam Pinkleton's direction, you need to listen to this episode to hear about the journey of Oh, Mary and why it has been such an insane success. And Sam also talks about his work on Sondheim's final show, and he discovers the perfect musical that has no notes. Okay, he doesn't discover it. He just wants to tell me it's Legally Blonde. Enjoy this episode with my good Judy, Sam Pinkleton. Sam Pinkleton is on That's a Gay-Ass Podcast. Sam, thank you for coming on this gay-ass pod. It's such an honor.
It is an honor to be here with you, Eric.
Sam, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have a gay-ass chat. And by the way, category is Broadway. Are you okay if we get into some theater deets on this pod?
I think we won't have anything to talk about if we don't.
So yeah, what if I was like, okay,
sports?
No, let's get into it. I actually want to open this conversation with a piece that really touched me that I want to get your take on. It was a show that was a pretty dark take on the musical Cabaret, and the performance stuck with me so deeply. And the person who actually played the MC was you. Sam Pinkleton, my freshman year of NYU. I'm sitting there minding my business saying, I'm going to watch this Tisch main stage, and who walks out? You. And I'm not just buttering your biscuit here. I'm telling you that to me, I was like, I've made it because this is what I'm surrounded by. People like Sam, mother trucking Pinkleton.
I will say that that production of Cabaret at NYU was by far the most famous I have ever felt. Anyway, I mean, it also just starting this conversation by talking about going to NYU drama is easily the most hateful thing two people could ever do, or the gayest thing.
No, but, it's both. It's absolutely both. There
was a real kind of NYU celebrity culture, which I was an absolutely toxic part of. And
wait, speak more. Was it like okay, so like freshman twinks were coming up to you and you treated them like they were sort of the citizens of what's it in Hunger Games where they're like,
I wasn't a villain. I want to believe that I was generous while also embracing my status as an NYU drama celebrity, because there was a real feeling of like the main stage musical, which to be clear was performed in a black box.
Yeah, let's not get it twisted. That was not a thrust. It
was not. I mean, it was not really anything, but it felt like winning a Tony Award.
And it felt like I was watching that win. And let's be clear, it is hateful and obnoxious to bring up that university. But if we're being honest about it, it is sort of stupid how shitty those theaters are for what people say is NYU theater. Like, it is a hallway of a theater.
It's a disgusting place.
But again,
and I can
let's
say that
full
because
circle.
I still owe them money.
Sure. But you really, I mean, it was so cool to see you do that. And then when I started to see your name pop up everywhere, I said to myself, look at her go. Look at her go. Do you also know that I have unwittingly become a Sam Pinkleton fangirl because I saw your Broadway choreographic debut of Machinal, and I absolutely was
These are such
enthused.
deep cuts. These are like shockingly deep cuts.
Sam, I don't even have to research you because I've been sort of right behind you every step of the way. It's very Hades Town of me.
Yeah, wow. It's between Cabaret and Machinal, you're one of the 13 people who saw those shows. So it was a real honor.
Well, listen, Sam, to have you on this podcast is an honor. And I want to get into the actual famous podcast question. So let's open it up. Sam, whose fault is it that you're gay? Who do we blame, babe?
You know, you warned me about this question, and I've heard other people's brilliant answers when I've listened to the pod, and I have been avoiding the truth of this answer because I wanted to come up with something more original. But I'm gonna just say it straight, which is, unfortunately, it's The Wizard of Oz. It just is. It's like the most unoriginal answer I could possibly have, but I could defend it in court as to, you know, why and how it made me and many others gay. I watched it every single day from the ages of like 2 to like 9.
Oh, bitch. She came out of the womb truly clicking those heels 3 times. 2 to 9.
Yeah.
Do you know, was it on television or did you have a fairy godmother?
We had a VHS. I was an only child. I didn't have friends. I didn't have friends my age until high school at all. I was a real like, put that smart kid in the trash can kind of kid. And, it was, I mean, it's just like a feast of cliches, but it was really my only friend.
Sam, can I tell you the feast of cliches? You're not alone. I walked down the aisle at my gay wedding to Somewhere Over the Goddamn Rainbow.
That must have been really hard for you.
Wow. I don't know if it was harder for me or the people watching.
Yeah. You just heard people walking out.
You know what's
it's a little on the nose.
You know what's really tough is that Matt's family, total like Georgia Catholic. I could have been absolutely placed into a hateful scenario, and they really are welcoming and lovely. But what's so devastating is that I wasn't even able to see Matt's grandparents' faces because their Uber driver took them to the wrong place and they missed the majority of our ceremony. Tough. But
they would have been really embarrassed by Somewhere Over the Rainbow, let's be honest.
And you know what? I can at least find solace in the fact knowing that they would have rolled their eyes to Jesus in the skies.
Yeah.
But you have recently directed Wizard of Oz in San Francisco, what looks like probably the gayest ass mother trucking production ever. Is that the case?
It is. Yeah, I did. You know, I'm like pretty aggressively not someone who's like, this has always lived in me and I just have to get it out. Like, that's not how I approach things. That's like for the therapist.
Yeah.
I really like when other things come my way and I can get excited about them. But and in some ways, like, I was so obsessed with The Wizard of Oz as a child that I thought like the worst thing I could do as an adult who, you know, very confusingly makes theater as my job is The Wizard of Oz. Like, it's just like it's too close.
Yeah.
But there were enough other gay people to convince to get excited about it. Most of all, 97,000 time Tony Award winner David Zinn. That I kind of felt like, like it's San Francisco. Like, I think I have to do it. And I kept proposing things that I knew would scare people so much that they would tell me no. And then they just kept being like, yeah, absolutely. You can put a gay marching band in the middle of Act 2. Absolutely.
And so why not?
It's
San Francisco. It's
yeah.
like there's something about the San Francisco air that like automatically gives you the fumes of poppers and makes your whole start to speak. But I have to say that people have an interesting relationship with like stage productions of Wizard of Oz. I think
because
like
it's terrible.
Exactly. It's like I mean, when I found out my senior year in high school musical was The Wizard of Oz, I was pissed. I was
it's so boring. And
that's my swan song. Jesus.
Yeah.
But do you think if that, let's just say that production notwithstanding, let's just say someone was like, Sam, you're amazing. You have all these great pieces of work on your resume. We want to bring the Wizard of Oz stage production to Broadway. Do you have the same reaction of like, it's a hard no, or only if it can be gay marching band?
I would be excited to do mine.
Yeah.
I would be excited to do mine. I would not be excited to see a recreation of the movie on stage, which is all I've ever seen. And I mean, I'm not excited to see a recreation of any movie on stage, really. I think you have to do something else.
Yeah, do you have an opinion about that when it comes to like, some people feel like Broadway's become very corporate and like there's a lot of the sort of like the whole thing with movies only being like Transformers 12 or like the surefire hits. Obviously, Oh Mary is the antithesis to that. But what do you say to people that are like, I'm feeling a bit disillusioned by the Broadway of it all? How do you convince people that it's like still booming, banging, slaying?
Yeah, I mean, I have a toxically good attitude about, unfortunately, everything, but particularly theater. I just feel like, you know, there's like a lot of different restaurants and you only have dinner once a day. Like, I don't, you know, I want original folks to be rewarded for their originality. I want crazy shit to be available on the highest level. I want weirdos to be paid. And like sometimes stuff surprises you. I can't subscribe to the black and white of like, this is just turning into a theme park. And in some ways, part of why is because like I saw the Gloria Estefan musical 4 times and I fucking loved it. I loved it. I wept. Yes. And, you know, like I wept through The Notebook. Like I think that it's dangerous to create any kind of laws around what is and isn't destroying culture.
Or just to make a snap decision that it's either all good or all bad, and we should either abandon or lean in. You know, if we're going into the things that unexpectedly made us weep, I'm going to name drop, say it with me, girlies, The Cher Show. When I saw that show, which by the way, you work with Michaela Diamond on Sondheim's Last Musicale. Michaela Diamond, of course, being one of the 3 Chers who, yes, did speak to each other on stage at the same time, playing different ages of Cher. I had been on, we're going to say 7.5 milligrams of an edible, and I have honestly never felt happier than watching 3 Chers tell each other to snap out of it.
Correct. Yeah. And there's like, I don't know. I just think that there's like, I wanted to be angry about the Carole King musical.
Oh,
and then
sweet.
I watched my 60-year-old cousin from Virginia watch the Carole King musical, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And my 60-year-old cousin like wouldn't have liked Is This a Room? And that's okay. I loved Is This a Room?
Yeah.
There's just, everybody's hungry for something different, and that's okay. And that is why it's an ecosystem.
100%. And you want to know one of my biggest regrets is something that I've learned now, but when I was like a sophomore in college, my family came to see me do a show and I wanted to please them all by taking them to a Broadway show that I thought they were going to enjoy. I'm not going to shit on this show. I'm going to shit on my decision to take them to that show because it was American Idiot. And my 90-year-old grandfather was sitting there at the loudest musical that has probably ever hit Broadway, and I have 3 straight brothers, and I was like, this is the only thing I can take them to. I should have taken them to Beautiful, the Carole King musical if it was open then. I should have taken them to like a Broadway spectacle that would have been me. I think I was like honestly in the throes of trying to cancel out my faggotry, and it came, and then they did not enjoy it as much as they would have enjoyed something else that would have been probably gayer. And it's speaking to that fact of like, we cannot assume what people like or what is going to be good.
We can't. And I also just, I really believe, especially on Broadway, that there are gateway drugs everywhere. And like, if you are bringing your family to IP, lowest common denominator, IP, the musical, maybe on your next trip, you'll bring your family to O'Mary and they will be indoctrinated to become gay terrors, you know?
We can only hope and assume that will happen. When I got to see O'Mary, it was like a very important, it felt like birthright in a way. It felt like a very necessary part of my experience as a gay person.
Were you the only gay person in the audience when you went?
I think so. I was sort of, instead of laughing, I just did a sibilant S just to make sure they knew. But when it comes to the O'Mary of it all, I know you're probably asked a billion questions, but the one that I'm not sure if I've heard your answer on is, at the opening night party at the Eagle, did Patti LuPone get peed on?
I think you're going to have to ask Mia Farrow about that, honestly.
I'm going to have to go to the apartment, go backstage, and see if Patti can tell me what the trough was like on that night.
I heard they were there together last night, actually. The after party for that play was at the Eagle.
You're joking.
I am.
If we start learning that every Broadway show does the Eagle for their opening.
No, this is a good... what just happened is telling me that we're living in a culture where it's possible that Mia Farrow went to the Eagle, which is a world that I really want to live in.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, it's like, that is the campier version of when they said that like Adele and Jennifer Lawrence went to pieces. It's like when you think about those worlds colliding, it really scratches an itch in our brains that is why we're lucky to be gay. The fact that we can idolize these powerful women being in and then put them in spaces where we maybe are having public sex. That to me is I don't need drugs. I need Mia Farrow at the Eagle.
It's healing. It's community healing.
What is your take on Oh Mary of It All when it went from this downtown hit to the Broadway? Were you like finding that any tones of the show had to change because of the loud, stupid faggotry, or did it sort of just get exploded from a smaller theater to a bigger one?
It's a good question. I mean, I think we doubled down in some ways. Like, I think it was not about changing it so much as it was like making it more what it is, which is so fast and so serious. Cole is an actress. Mm-hmm. It is a play, and so we I hope went deeper. We're at this beautiful theater. It looks like the theater from the Muppet Show. It's like a child drew a cartoon of a theater. And, I like wish that I had juicy drama to share, but honestly, like that whole show, which to be clear, none of us thought any of this was going to happen. Like that's actually true.
I'm sure.
And so it's like a lot of really nice people who are super good at their jobs, working really hard to do something, like couldn't be more boring. And also it's what happened. And I think I was extremely, when Broadway first came up, I was like, that's a terrible idea. That's a terrible idea because it's just going to turn into I don't know what I thought, but I immediately saw it getting like watered down.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, that makes sense. You're probably there's the fear of something that is so authentically itself. And then, of course, if you put it into any sort of different, higher pressurized place with maybe a bit of higher stakes, there's the fear that it's going to lose what it is, the gayness, the whatever. I mean, it's also, I find interesting that there are so many shows and plays and movies that are also like meticulously studied and historic, and then all of a sudden Oh Mary comes around, and sure, she is based in herstory, but it's like throwing away a lot of that sort of seriousness, and it's just enjoying. Obviously, it is a serious story when it's performed by Cole and the cast, but the actual experience of watching it is like, no, we're just becoming gayer watching it.
Yeah, and I want to, one of the most joyous things about watching it on Broadway, like I went back a few days ago and I like walked in and stood in the back of the theater and looked around and I was like, oh, some of these people are on vacation. Like that is a large family from Ohio. Wow. And like they're about to watch like cum jokes. And I don't know, I really, again, when I have a toxically positive attitude about everything, I'm so sorry. It's unfortunately real. But I like believe in giving people a good night out. Like it's so nice when you see something, whether it's a movie or a play or whatever, that's like, oh my God, I had a good night out. And I like, if we can deliver that with integrity, it's a delight. Like I just had that experience at Cats. I'm sure I'm not the first person to talk about Cats on this podcast. And I was just like, oh, I'm in a space for 2.5 hours, just like having a blast.
No, I do think the Ballroom Cats has come up, and it should, because it is another example of like, A, a good night out, but B, when you just turned the volume up on the queerness of it all. And it's very, very healing to my inner child to think of a family from Ohio seeing either Ballroom Cats or Oh Mary. Can you imagine, Sam, you're 15 years old and you go see Cola Scola on Broadway? Can you imagine?
I know. Or Ballroom Cats. And to see like a swing that big that doesn't apologize for its faggotry.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was anything when I was, obviously, like, it's different, but The Wizard of Oz was it made so many of us gay. But like, I'm trying to think of when you were younger, can you think of anything that sort of was in that vein of just unapologetically gay?
Directly? No, I mean, no.
You're right. Directly, no. I guess. Well, that's why I say Sister Act 2 made me gay. Is because it was a very indirect, like, Whoopi sort of counseling Lauryn Hill was like, I was Lauryn Hill being counseled by Sister Mary Clarence.
Totally. No, Sister Act 2, the great performances, recording of Into the Woods with Bernadette Peters.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
one of my first hookups with a boy that played we watched the first act and then the second act played as we went down.
No one is
Browntown.
Alone. Wow.
And no one
was alone.
Wait,
Incredible.
Speaking of these classics, I've heard through the grapevine that Godspell was big for you. Is that the truth?
The cuts just keep getting deeper. Here's the thing about Godspell. Godspell is the musical that is why theater kids get bullied and should. Let's just be clear about that. It's like when people are thinking about why theater is embarrassing, it's exclusively because of Godspell. It's just like people with face paint carrying around ladders getting just like beaten up in high school. Oh. I had the great pleasure of doing Godspell, not one, not two, but 3 times before the age of 18. Because my high school loved Godspell so much that they were like, we're going to do it a second time.
They did the revival.
Yeah. So I got to be Judas twice. A very aggressive, straight, intimidating 15-year-old gay Judas. And I mean, Godspell is, unfortunately, Stephen Schwartz, if you're listening, it is the thing that got me. Like, Wizard of Oz made me gay, but Godspell forced me into a life in the theater. Like, I remember walking into the auditorium of my high school during Godspell rehearsal and being like, what are they doing? And I talked my way into the production. It had already started rehearsal.
Sam, you're a negotiator at your heart.
I'm a shark. I'm a demon.
Well, that's why you can blend your theater creativity with the business mind of it all, which is something that I've tried to work on myself. But you walked into that theater and you said a 5, 6, 7, 8.
I said, I want in. We beseech thee, hear me.
Well, speaking of hearing thee, I was very seen, not by a Godspell rehearsal, but similarly, I walked into rehearsal. So my older brother is a few years older, if you can believe it, and he played percussion in the pit of Once Upon a Mattress at my high school. And I was like in 7th grade. And I walk into their rehearsal and then when I saw the actual show, I promise this is a real butter of your biscuit. Similarly to when I saw you play the MC, I was watching these high school kids do Once Upon a Mattress, and I knew these were Broadway performances. And I needed to be a part of it.
Yeah. It is. It's actually like weirdly a note that I always give that I stole from another director who I love very much named Emma Griffin, which is like, when you're in a musical in high school, maybe not everybody, but I think that I wish there were a word in English for the feeling that you have when you're in a musical in high school and you're like, I'm amazing. Yeah, I am better than anyone has ever been in anything. And I've like gone back and watched my high school production of Grease.
Oh no.
I wasn't amazing.
Wait, don't tell me. In Grease, you were
most miscast. Guess the most miscast.
Thank you for that. That means you were Kaneki.
Even more miscast than that.
Danny?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Can you
you
believe
were the
that?
lead, honey. You had to be the lead.
Yeah, it was like, hey, come on. It was actually in my contract for high school.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't consider you a writer.
But that's like, it's such a specific thing. It's like and I actually feel like when I've seen performers that excite me the most, they're doing that thing. I'm like, oh, they're performing in a way that is like how people perform in high school when you're just, I mean, I think that's what Cole does, but also I think that's what Usher does. I think that's what Cara Young does. Like, of just like.
But you know what you're speaking to is, I think, there's a to me a balance of course the skill and of course the actual time and work you put into building your storytelling and your ability to whatever perform, sing, act, who cares. The other side of it though is delusion. And the delusion
absolutely.
And the delusion is that you are Usher at the Super Bowl, that you are, because not joking, when you said that, I immediately found myself going back in time and thinking of all the experiences where I had imposter syndrome and then just told myself, pretend you are the biggest fucking star. And I have applied that to the beginnings of this podcast, to the live show I've done for this podcast. Without that delusion, I would not be able to have the confidence, fake or otherwise, to continue doing what I'm doing. Because if you don't have that, then there's too many forces against you.
Hardcore. And it's all I want to see. Like, it's all I want to see is people who are just going to fucking go for it. Like, just absolutely go for it and knock over every piece of furniture in the process. I'm so much more interested in that spirit of a little bit of delusion than I am in like calculated, intelligent, confident, whatever. I don't care.
Well, what comes to mind when you talk about making a mess and just taking a big swing is you working with Liz Swados, which I think is an important person to bring up. Now, if anybody listening doesn't know, can you give us sort of a quick pitch of the genius of Elizabeth Swados?
Oh my God, this is a soapbox that I would love to stand on. I want to just celebrate how well researched you are. So every gay person, anybody who's listening to this should stop listening and should Google Liz Swados. That's Swados. Liz Swados was a composer, a playwright, a director, a choreographer, a real artist. A yucky phrase for me to say, but she just was. And when she was 26 years old, the public theater was like in a kind of boom. And she walked up to Joe Papp's office and said, "You should let me make a musical. You should pay for me to interview homeless young people for a year and make a musical." And the public theater did that. And she made a musical called Runaways. And at the age of 26, that musical went to Broadway, and she directed it, and she wrote it, and she choreographed it, and she music directed it. And there's never been anyone like her. She made a version of Alice in Wonderland that starred Meryl Streep at the Public Theater. She made things with kids. She couldn't stop. I visited her on her deathbed, and she said, maybe we could make a 10-minute piece together right now. She was my teacher at NYU. So that's a nice thing to say about NYU. Maybe we can put that at the beginning of the episode since I said so many ugly things earlier. In that class was, Shayna Taub was in that class and wrote her first song under Liz. I was just a gay kid who wanted to be in the chorus. Like, that's it. I was like, I want to be upstage left in 42nd Street. And then I want to be, giving blowjobs in the dressing room of the New London Barn Playhouse. That was the height of my ambition.
Which, by the way, still can happen.
And sounds fantastic right now. Honestly.
Yeah, really.
New London Barn Playhouse. I'm available for 42nd Street anytime you want. Can't tap, but I'd happy to be there.
You'd be happy to suck.
Yeah. And so Liz was like, that's not who you are. You have to write things. You have to direct things. You have to make things. And I was like, fuck you, lady. You don't know what you're talking about. And it was like a lightning rod. I mean, all roads lead back to her. And there was a kind of actual fearlessness, actual fuck you, who cares, actual like take 5 minutes, first idea, best idea. I mean, all of the stuff that as we get older, we get more and more and more afraid of because, impulses are a little easier when there aren't stakes and money and survival and, notoriety and all that horseshit. So she, there's a lot of people, I'm not alone, who all roads lead back to her. Everybody should know about her. There's an amazing album that was made after she died called the Liz Swados Project that has all of these very cool people on it, like Michael R. Jackson and Grace McLean and Shayna and Taylor Mack and all kinds of folks. Anybody who thinks they care about musical theater, you don't care unless you know Liz Swados.
Amen. And as someone who was sort of lucky enough to see all of these people work on her shows, whether it was professional or within school, I mean, the luckiest thing I think I got to witness was the reality show, which is what a lot of performers made for the incoming freshmen at NYU, and Liz Swados was the sort of mastermind behind it. And it absolutely, again, when you talk about scratching the gay brain, it just was so unapologetic. And of course, it was like being swaddled by a beautiful maternal figure, and it was also silly and stupid and smart. And even just the spiel you gave inspires me now, because I carry so much fear in my creative life right now, and I work daily to combat it. And I think that even in this moment, I'm trying to embrace what you're saying, that Liz's sort of idea of just do not apologize and have the guts and have the chutzpah to just fucking make the thing and make it big. And obviously this is a gay podcast, so I'm going to say, like, queer people, I was very much silenced in many ways growing up in my little Midwestern town and in my very straight family and in my experience. And these people did not silence me because they were wanting to silence a person. It was just because that's the world that we were put in. And so now I'm like, via all of this work, it's all about taking off the muzzle and then just being fucking as shameless as possible. And I think that she is a person that inspires me, and I'm so glad that you are able to speak to it on this podcast, because that is the only thing that we can aspire to, which is just being as big, dumb, brash, and gay as possible.
Yeah, hardcore. And she would, like, I think like the gayest, stupidest things I ever made were with her. And also she would never be like, be gay, like do your gay thing. Like, it was always more expansive than that. It was just like taken for granted that there was no way to do anything at less than 100 and in whatever form you were in. And if that meant I'm going to make the gayest thing, or I'm going to make a thing that is, with like pigs or finger paint, it's just like, fucking go for it.
Girlinas, we're more than halfway through the year, and I know you have some New Year's resolutions you have not tooched. But if learning a new language is one of your resolutions, honey, you gotta go to Babbel. Here's why I'm obsessed. I'm a self-diagnosed ADHD girl. No, a doctor has not confirmed, but babe, the proof is in the pudding. Babbel has 10-minute lessons that are quick and handcrafted by over 200 language experts. So with my short attention span, honey, it's perfect. Also, it prepares you to not just learn the language, but actually have real conversations. When I go to España, Barcelona to be specific, I'm not just going to learn how to say, where is the bathroom? I'm going to learn how to ask a Barcelona man to make out. I'm going to learn how to ask for directions, order at a restaurante, okay? But don't just take my word for it. There are studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and beyond that proves Babbel works, which is why I'm so excited to give you a special limited time deal for the gay-ass listeners. You can get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, and it's only for our listeners at babbel.com/gayass. That's right, up to 60% off at babbel.com/gayass. Spelled BABBEL.com/gayass. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Let's turn the page and go to a Sam Pinkleton inspiration sesh. What is inspiring you currently? Are there any shows, books, donuts that are making you sopping wet?
Okay. Oh man. I mean, I have such basic answers. I should know. I keep this bookshelf here. These are the books that I love the most. I'm none of which I want to talk about right now.
You can go basic.
I loved this book so much. Sheila Heti, Alphabetical Diaries. If you don't know Sheila Heti, get in. I love every book, but this one especially I loved. And the audiobook is narrated by Kate Berlant.
Well, look at that.
An ally. I just loved it so hard. I mean, because 75 hours of my day are spent sending emails about theater, which I wouldn't recommend. I have been just like taking a bath in the stupidest things possible, which includes just like the pop music of the summer.
Oh yeah.
Which is not usually my ministry, but like here we are just like listening to the exact same shit that every other gay person is listening to.
Well, I feel like each gay person leans towards like sort of a Sabrina header or a Chapel header or is there one girly that is your sort of the head of your altar?
I default to like, I mean, of the moment I feel the most excited about Chapel. But I don't know. I'm also just like, I like things that are from 10 years ago. Like I just listen to Robin and twirl around.
Well, you know what? If we can, unfortunately, I don't know why my fucking wedding keeps coming up, but the last song we wanted to play at our wedding was a Robin song. And then while we were dancing to I'm in the corner watching you kiss her, my straight friend turns to me. He's like, this is really sad. This song is really sad.
Oh, yeah, it's devastating. We're the first gay people to ever talk about that song also.
Well, and I carry that with huge honor to know that we're letting gay people know that Robin exists. But I'm also a girly that will sometimes not roll with the new things and just go to my comfort albums. And there is nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just need to bathe in Beyonce's first solo album where she sings Me, Myself, and I. Sometimes you need that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I miss a lot of pop culture, which I realize makes me a shame, a stain on the community. And you know, like I spent like the month of August listening to like traditional Celtic music. I would recommend that, honestly. Get in there.
Where were you? Who hurt you in August?
It was just what I needed. Listen, like it was exactly what I needed. I hope everybody goes and listens to traditional Celtic music. It's like taking a bath in comfort. And that's what I needed more than Brat Girl Summer or whatever the hell we just did.
Well, then, since you brought up Celtic music, I hate to get political on That's a Gay Ass Podcast, but in Legally Blonde the musical, Paula has a lot of her Irish music. The song Ireland, is it a slay or a nay?
We speak about Legally Blonde the musical in hushed tones in this house, and it is I don't think it misses a single mark. I take Legally Blonde the musical as I hold it on a very high pedestal.
That could have gone either way, and I was very nervous for a second there.
I am deeply unwilling to speak about Legally Blonde the musical in any light other than a positive one.
Well, when you talked about sort of people being angry about like IP or like whatever it is, my first thought was Legally Blonde absolutely changed the perception of a movie musical. A musical based on a movie has to be bad. And I remember, if I can shout out my high school theater teacher, Amy Allen, she went to New York before I'd ever visited. And she saw Legally Blonde and she told me how amazing it was. And I then, of course, watched The Search for Elle Woods and the rest was history.
Yeah, you know what's bad? Bad stuff. Like, we get excited about deciding that things are going to be bad based on the idea. And then, like, no, I had a blast at Legally Blonde. Also, you know what was a fun show? Hairspray. I saw the second act 17 times.
You were a second actor.
I was 21. And I had to find a way in, and that was the only way. But like, I don't know. I just like, sometimes things are bad, sometimes things are good. Also, let's make a list of completely original things that are unwatchable.
Yeah. And by the way, I would never deign to say an ill word about Hairspray. Welcome to the 60s I would listen to those women on the cast recording sing that over and over instead of watching porn. And then I would watch porn. But like, the Hairspray was huge in my sort of obsession with theater, because I feel like you have Godspell. People listening, I'm sure that our theater girlies have the cast recording that really, really raised them, and I can name a few, but I think that it is, you might call it your toxic positivity, but I think it's refreshing, especially when sometimes when you log onto Twitter and all you see is someone saying, I like Legally Blonde the musical, and then 25 people being like, are you kidding?
I hope you die. Yeah. Yeah, you're going to die today.
So why don't we have some gay positivity? And speaking of gay positivity, I would love to positively ask you the next Gay Ass Podcast question, which is, Sam Pinkleton, if the world was ending, you could only save one character actress, who would you save?
It's an easy answer for me. I feel like I just came on this podcast to lift up the names of women who people should talk about more.
Please.
Linda Lavin.
Oh,
Linda
yeah.
Lavin. Linda Lavin, I hope you're cheering if you're listening to this. I mean, the things she's done, she's television's Alice, which is absolutely the best theme song of any TV show ever. Like, fight me on that. Television's Alice, which also, it holds up. It's so funny. There's so much funny physical comedy in that show. And then she played Mama Rose in Gypsy on Broadway, and she won a Tony for a Neil Simon play. And she is an age that I'm not going to say on this podcast out of respect, but you can Google it. It's a very big number. And she's on a show that just got picked up. She's doing a TV show with Nathan Lane right now. I mean,
that's the one. That's the one where they Nathan Lane, and is it like another Matt Bomer, right?
That's right. Yes. She's on that show. And
Holy
she's
shit.
one of those people who, when you start to realize, you're like, wait, Linda Lavin has been in everything and she's the best thing in it. And I'm biased because I did the first play on Broadway that I assistant directed, she was in. And she was so nice to me. And there were so many other people in that building who would not make eye contact with me because they were like, there's a gay child here.
Sure.
And she was extremely generous. And last year or the year before last, I directed her in a play, and it just I mean, she's so funny, and we as a culture, pardon the expression, we love to underestimate older women.
Yeah.
It's an epidemic, and it's an epidemic in theater. Yeah. Specifically, because older women are asked to do very specific things. Mm-hmm. And she came in and was like, fuck this, and was so funny and so dirty. I want her. I think she's going to be one of those people who is like Betty White, and we're just like, oh, she's 99 and she's doing a series.
Well, and
we're
she
better for
deserves it. Yeah, we are better for it. And I just, my two thoughts are, one, the Linda Lavin of it all, to have that crazy career and then to also be so gracious and to work with a twink Sam Pinkleton and to give him that attention and positivity is something that we cannot take for granted, because a lot of people idolize these performers, these actors, whoever they are, and then behind the scenes, they might not be as gracious as you would like them to be. So when you find out that one of them is just so present and incredible when they're not performing, it just makes my heart feel so warm. And on the other side of it, did you have to pinch yourself when you realized that you had met her when you were assisting and then you directed her in a play last year? Are you able to celebrate these successes? Because I am someone that is not very good at that, but I just want to give a quick moment to even though I have not actually personally known you for very long, I feel very excited and just you are a person that I only celebrate and feel so jazzed about your global takeover. And I hope that you can celebrate yourself.
I personally can't, but I'm talking to people about medication so that maybe I can. But my grandmother can, because she could give a fuck about my little gay plays. But when I worked with Linda Lavin, she thought that was cool.
Interesting.
She thought that was cool.
I love when we find out the things that our parents or grandparents, usually they don't care about much because they don't have the frame of reference. But I love when there's that little oh, Linda Lavin did it.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, that went really well. So that was a nice thing to not feel like a complete waste.
Yeah, mine was a Triscuit commercial.
Incredible. That's right. There we are. Yeah, there's just like an epidemic in show business of character actresses or older actresses being labeled difficult. I'm not saying that's true for Ms. Lavin by any means, but I exist to push back on that. Like anytime now I hear like they're difficult, I'm like, says who? And if we're lucky, we'll get a documentary about it if they're actually difficult.
Well, I was going to bring up
names.
the Faye Dunaway documentary. Did you watch it?
I haven't watched it yet. I can't fucking wait.
Oh, it's really, I can't wait for you to watch it, and maybe we'll have a reunion episode because you're so great when bringing up these incredible women, and I think it's a very important topic. And I watched this documentary, and I'm not giving anything away. It's just, it gives you a perspective on her quote unquote difficulty, and I think sort of fills in the picture, and I think it's up to the viewer to decide.
Fun.
Just like you're saying. Is she difficult, or is it all understandable? And I think that you're right. Do you think there are a lot of character actresses or older women that are said they're difficult when they're just strong people?
Yeah, I just think that men are, I think that there's a lot of powerful men in show business who are lazy and who work with smart actresses, and when they can't be bent into something, then they're like, well, I'm moving on.
That makes, especially if it's, consider the source is basically what we're saying. Consider
Correct.
the source.
Yes.
Well,
we don't deserve any of these actresses.
Agree. And listen, Sam, it's sadly we're getting to the last chapter of this interview, but I would love to do a few quick fire questions about your previous work. Is that okay with you?
We'll see how it goes.
When we talk about Here We Are, Sondheim's last show with insane cast, Joe Mantello directed, Bobby Cannavale's in it, Dennis O'Hare, Michaela Diamond, David Hyde Pierce, Rachel Bay Jones, Stephen Pasquale. Did you have any mindfuckery knowing it was Stephen Sondheim's last show? How did you get out of bed knowing that you were choreographing such an important piece?
I had to leave that at the door immediately. It was like a deeply ritualistic thing. And everyone was really good about that, including Joe Mantello, of like, the only successful way to do this is to come into it being like, we're making a show. And the minute that it turns into a theater legacy museum and pressure and having to honor and blah, 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 we're fucked. So I did not think about it being Sondheim's last show once. I haven't read anything about it. I didn't read the Frank Rich thing. I didn't read anything. It would have destroyed me.
Yeah.
I just had to come into it like it was anything else. And I'm very glad I did.
Do you have a favorite Sondheim show?
Ooh. I wish that I could say it's Anyone Can Whistle, but it isn't, unfortunately. I think it's probably Assassins.
Love Assassins. My ex and I had a really good fight at intermission.
I thought you were gonna say had really good sex.
No, I don't always fuck to classic musicals, but that was a fight. That was at City Center Encores. What about Natasha Pierre, Great Comet? Obviously, huge show for you. Tony-nominated choreographer. What was different about attending the Tony Awards as a nominee than you had envisioned as a closet case growing up?
It's so hot in there, and there's no food. Or water. Like, I just remember being like feeling like deprived of the basic resources you need to survive. I mean, I think this is probably true for any like showbiz awards show, but it was a really wild moment of like, oh, this is like, we're basically like any other like niche industry, it's like, oh, we're at the like tulip planters convention, like all of these people know each other. I've it's so small. I think I just felt I loved theater so much as a kid. I mean, I was really a theater kid, but I felt so intimidated by it, and I felt like it was so vast. I felt like it was, you know, watching Lilias White on the Tony Awards in The Life, which is the best Tony Awards performance of all time, with the second being the Will Rogers Follies. It just seemed like huge, and it's so tiny. It's a really tiny world, which is amazing and also annoying because, you know, there should be more people in it who aren't currently in it.
I agree wholeheartedly. One of the other shows that I saw that you worked on as I was following your career, unwittingly being your fangirl, is Significant Other with Gideon Glick, friend of the podcast. Were you single while you worked on that show, and did it want to make you end it all?
Wow. I was in a relationship during that show. I am a person who is I'm married. I've been married for 8 years, 7 years. Hope my husband doesn't listen to this. I am always somebody who, like, when I'm in a relationship, I wish I were single. And I love my husband enough to be able to say that comfortably in a public space. And I romanticize being single in a very big way. And so what I remember about Significant Other is being like, it's not that bad. Come on, Gideon.
Yeah. No, Sam, that is so beautifully brave, because I think most people do that. I think most people do that. In fact, there is someone who listens to the podcast who he messages me because he really wants to be in a relationship, and I understand that. I absolutely love being married. I love Matt, but I also agree that I think both sides do grass is greener. Oh
my God. I think about being single all the time, and like having to realize that is a different feeling than I hate my husband and want to be divorced.
Well, that
has been a journey.
That is the reality that I wish more people spoke to about relationships, is that particularly like the straight world being like, if you're attracted to another person, you're cheating and you're doomed and you will burn in hell. It's like, baby, we are literal animals and you are gonna want to fuck the barista.
Yeah.
But that is refreshing, and I 100% co-sign that. And God bless. I have to sadly end this interview, but Sam, you have been a true joy. And to be able to say that I got to chat with you after I saw Oh Mary on Broadway, and then to say that you have now agreed to come on this gay-ass podcast, it is an honor. I am so, so grateful to you. And can you please tell the listeners where they can follow you and where they can get tickets to Oh Mary?
I'm only on Instagram, and I'm not that good at it. My Instagram is Pam Stinkleton. But I'm neither young nor am I cool. And how do they get tickets to Oh Mary? Well, they can line up in the morning. It's a bloodbath out there, but people do get in every day. There's a lottery. There's also tickets that are available for sale. They are expensive. I'm sorry that Broadway can't solve capitalism, because it turns out Broadway is capitalism. Let's all work on a better system together. And maybe if you're lucky, there will be more tickets to Oh Mary to buy at some point.
Hell fucking yeah. Stay gay, Sam.
Dropping a teaser.
We love that teaser. And we'll be posting the Oh Mary updates. And I'll see you next week, gay-ass listeners.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for listening to That's a Gay-Ass Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, tag me on Instagram at Eric Wills, or the podcast Instagram at Gay-Ass Podcast, and let us know what you thought. I also hate to make it about me, but I just had a 35th birthday, and if you want to give me a gorgeous gay-ass gift, leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts, and it'll help to spread the gay-ass gospel. I love you so much. And also, I'll see you on YouTube for the full video episodes, so you can see my face, but more importantly, Sam Pinkleton's gorgeous form. I'll see you next week on That's a Gay-Ass Podcast. Bye.
You've been listening to That's a Gay-Ass Podcast, hosted by me, Eric Williams. If you want to see and hear more, make sure you're subscribed to us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or Patreon at Gay-Ass Podcast. That's a Gay-Ass Podcast is executive produced by Eric Williams and produced by Nathanael McClure. We'll see you next week.